I recently finished the 2.2 story, and while a bit late and still fresh off the experience, there were a lot of great things that stuck out in my mind. But one of the biggest ones that stuck out was the... wait a second. This video contains huge-ass spoilers, by the way, like as big as Cantarella's bouncing jellyfish. So if you don't like having sweaty spoilers dropped on your chin, come back when you're done. Anywho, one of the biggest things that Kuro did well was Cartethia's death and revival and Imperator's death. Nobody mentioned this huge improvement and foundation shifting thing, so I'm gonna talk about it. I'll talk about how and why it was more successful when compared to the other major death related scene in 1.3 scenario with Shorekeeper, and why 2.2's death is so important going forward. If you ask me, 1.3 had some good moments, but it failed in a few areas, namely the way it told things to us, which could be attributed to the translation and localization side of things, but it also didn't land on the execution of even pacing, and could be felt most notably when Shorekeeper sacrifices herself. After that point, things felt really rushed, and I still don't fully understand how all of that worked out in favor of Rover, but alright, whatever. Like, I guess I'll just wait until whenever we go back and the Harmonious Lament object is expanded upon. But the rush nature hurt Wuthering Waves in a big way that people I don't think mention too much. It cheapened death. What do I mean by this? Well, let's look at how death has been set up until this point. Wuthering Waves since the beginning has had death be a big part of the world in some fashion, and it's what makes things a bit complicated. Reverberations can be felt and interacted with, be it in or out of sonorospheres. This can be seen in many ways, like in 1.0's Retroact Rain creating illusions of the dead, and having that be an interactable thing despite not actually being real. But they are dead soldiers, and their frequencies can be recreated or used, like how Tempest Mephis is an amalgamation of dead soldier frequencies, or how frequencies can be sucked out of weapons creating more TDs, or like with Dreamless and how she can utilize dead soldier sword skills. We also see death being this intermediary thing in the 1.2 festival with Shangli Yao and the Moontree Lodge's Sonorosphere, where Yao is able to interact with Paskar who died in a Waveworn effect, mending their ties and putting Paskar to rest. 1.3's trapping of Hoda also sort of skirts death, where she's been trapped in an endless loop in Guishu Port. In 2.0, Roshia knows the golden spirit that guides us near Penitent's End, and 2.2 Cartethyia sings and sends her frequencies of mourning to the dead dragons and people of the past. I mean, we even see the dead dragon frequencies flying around in that area, and being seemingly receptive to her. So needless to say, while things die, it's like what the first trailer Daybreak said.
What is dead will stay buried. Except nothing ever truly dies.
So with all of that said though, it sounds like death was already quote-unquote cheap. But I'd argue against that because of how Wuthering Waves has established death as a concept. If things never die, that just means when a real death does happen, it's a serious thing, because it goes against the semi-impermanence and reconstructions we've been seeing throughout the patches. Death is plentiful, but just because it is plentiful doesn't necessarily equate to it being cheap. I think cheapness in this sense should be attributed to the function it serves and the quality of how it is served, not how often we see it. So that leads me to ask, where did 2.2 succeed where 1.3 didn't? I think you see it in these two main aspects, build-up and delivery, and they tend to go hand in hand with each other. 2.2 obviously had more of a leg up because it is the first main expansion of an entirely new region, where 1.3 didn't necessarily have that. We knew of the Black Shores thanks to Alto and Encore, but we weren't based there. We were based in Huanglong and kicked off from there, so there was already a detachment. That means in the build-up department, 2.0 had just way more time from the get-go to allow us more emotional attachment and mystery, along with the huge cliffhanger of Cartethyia's first meeting at the end of 2.0. Additionally, in the 2.2 quest specifically, they gave enough moments and the specific one-on-one time between Rover and Cartethyia to really solidify a connection between the two. She was a quest mechanic key and helper as we navigated the Avenolium. We were unraveling a mystery about Cartethyia together, getting her memories back together, riding in a gondola and having raunchy handholding and sleeping sessions together. 2.2 had Rover and Cartethyia interact with equal interest in the goal of 2.2 in Cartethyia herself, and obviously for the wider betterment of Raguna as a civilization. Also, I want to add that Rover's voice acting here helped immensely too, because it immersed us more, but also listen to how they talk to Cartethyia.
Did you feel any discomfort while we were clearing out the remnants?
Nothing out of the ordinary. I felt fine. I suppose this alone is not enough to determine whose resonator I am.
Yeah, you've helped a lot. Don't worry about that for now. Did you know that echo well?
Cadanto was my first echo after I joined the Order.
But he still recognized the sword and was still trying to protect it.
If I really am...
I can take care of myself. If it comes to that, I'll still remember the girl who cared enough to worry about me.
It's so gentle, like she's an abandoned puppy. I mean, like, she kinda is. Like, look at this fucking face. I just wanna... Oh! But the voice acting helped aid in that emotional building up as well as the successful delivery of it. Compare that to 1.3, where we get saved by Shorekeeper and brought to the Black Shores. We spend a good chunk with Alto getting to know the place, with the later ones being with Shorekeeper. But the biggest difference in the later Shorekeeper specific parts is that what we are unfolding isn't as personally connected like it is to Cartethyia. We're investigating odd frequencies from Guishu Port, which could be lament levels of importance. The job was to find it, fix it, and prevent another potential lament via Blackshore's Tethys system. So story-wise, it is tied to unraveling the mystery of the Guishu Port odd frequencies, with Shorekeeper accompanying us as a shadow to explain things, and the Black Shores being the hub of the operation for finding out what happened in Guishu Port. Additionally, things felt a bit one-sided, and I think this is attributed most to the Mary Sue kind of thing I've talked about with this older Rover video, where I mentioned that one of the potential consequences of a Mary Sue was lopsided character interactions. Shorekeeper and Rover, to me, I think would be an example of that lopsidedness, as Shorekeeper is continuously saying how she'd essentially die for us and will always be here, with our response being... well, literally not there until she's about to die. The interactions on our way up to the sacrifice at Guishu Port's recreated past could be seen as impersonal interactions, except for maybe the tea scene, which was really sweet, but small and already too late by this point for building up a solid connection. The only other ones were after she was already about to die in the core of the Tethys system, and after she was already saved in the piano cutscene. It was at these points where some people could feel that cheapening of death due to the failure of building up and rushing the delivery in a more equal and interactive kind of way. Kuro pretty blatantly hinted at her death from her frequent reminders setting up predictability. Shorekeeper came back too quickly for her death to feel impactful, not allowing us to even really wallow in the possibility of her death. And even then, the lopsidedness takes away from some even really having a personal attachment because of those scarce interactions. Again, Shorekeeper was seldom really with us most of this time. She was mainly in our ear telling us about things, as for a good chunk she was just a projection, where Cartethyia appeared for mechanics, boat rides, rests, dialogue options and information, and in-game scenes, which were plentiful in 2.2 from the start. Now I will say that the comparisons aren't totally equal, and I give leeway in the harshness in which I speak about it. But in this inequality between Shorekeeper and Cartethyia and the build-up and deliver of death, we see a massive improvement and shift in how they handle the storytelling aspect, but most importantly, the death and Rover. See, the entire reason I'm looking so much into the death aspect is because while Cartethyia lives on like Shorekeeper, there was a tangible death in Imperator, who, keep in mind, is a freaking near-immortal god. This death of Imperator was so important to have because we're finally seeing that Rover isn't just our fix-all solution to things. Rover not only couldn't save Cartethyia at that time, but it ended up with the death of Raguna's Sentinel, which I can see having consequences of some kind as we move forward, as the Fraxidus know of this based on Frolova's petals dancing away in the last scene. There is no way, seeing how powerful Frolova is, the knowledge she has been seeking and studying with Second Awakenings, that she doesn't know of Imperator's passing. This sets up the expectation for Cartethyia to become strong, surpassing Rover. That will be tested inevitably once she is forced to face a civilization-level threat, which I can imagine being spearheaded by the Fraxidus. Will she need Rover again, or will she have grown strong enough to live up to her title as the Blessed Maiden? Going back to Rover though, this was I think one of the first times where it feels like there was a consequence in which Rover couldn't make it out without losing something. And that alone is big, as the perfection of Rover, or the safety blanket that Rover provides or symbolizes, isn't as all protective as we may think. That's important to me because it's leaving open the deeper reflections on how Rover deals with solving later civilization conflicts, and how that affects their approach and even their psyche going forward. This patch was massive in showing us that while Rover is and has been powerful, competent, and level-headed, they are but one person and can't save everyone. Cartethyia was an example of that when fighting Fleur-de-Lis, which led to the inevitable death of Imperator. 1.3 to 2.2 in terms of how they dealt with a sort of similar scenario blueprint tells me that they've heard at least some of the feedback. I think while again 1.3 had some great moments, Shorekeeper's imperfect execution I think was a valuable lesson in making 2.2 and Cartethyia what it is. It also was a great time to point at death and linking that to Rover more personally, as it also parallels Rover's life to be cycles of death and revival. Not only that, it makes me feel kinda bad for Rover, like, they've been alive reincarnating for millions of years. I can't imagine how often and the varying degrees they felt from not being able to save others. I bet once Rover gets more of their memories back, Imperator's death will hit much harder because of what we've learned. But do you think I have a point here, and did you notice this, or was this the first time you did from me pointing it out? Of course, thank you for letting me take your time, like and sub, and be safe out there.